Hello, Mel. Hello, Gina.
Good morning and good afternoon.
Morning and afternoon, you're right.
Yep. So, our movement around eyes. And nose. Ears. Thyroid. Top of the kidney meridian. Thymus. And kidneys. Our lymphatic work. So, collarbone first. Sides of the neck. And we can also do the fingers with the ears. And we can add in the back of the neck. So just massaging those muscle tendon areas. Squeezing and releasing brainstem. Pecs. And we can do under the armpit. And the abdominal area. Stomach meridian. And then moving to the crease. Back of knees. and our yin-yang padding.
Hey, Steve, is the yin yang padding, is that part of the lymphatic drainage, or does that have dual purposes?
Well, it has, I'd say, more than one purpose. So primarily, a lot of people will do this to remove blockages in the meridian system. So it's called yin-yang padding because we're moving down yin meridian sides and up yang meridian sides. However, as a larger lymphatic practice, people in China will also do this as part of their lymphatic work. So I would say, and again, as I've mentioned before, when we're moving qi, we're moving blood, we are moving the lymphatic, we are working with the nervous system, and also the joints. So by spending time on the joints in this particular yin-yang padding, we're also removing blockages there, and a lot of blockages have a tendency to build up there. Arthritis builds up there. But if we were to do a larger lymphatic practice, which basically we do because we do our 6-point lymphatic work, and then we go right to this yin-yang padding. This yin-yang padding, if you think about it, is also moving lymph, and we're doing it not only in the body area here, but we're adding the arms and the legs. And notice we're covering some of the same territory of, behind the knees. We're doing the belly area. We're doing the collarbone area.
Is it doing anything to stimulate bone growth when you stay with the joint?
Well, yes. So the padding is sending a vibration into the bones. And as we know, any vibration we can send into the bones is going to be beneficial.
Okay.
There's those low vibration tablets that run at 30 hertz. And they were basically developed. So we can do the spiraling. They were basically developed through a NASA grant because they noticed when the astronauts went up into space, they would lose bone density because it wasn't the same kind of pressurization that we have here on Earth. And so vibration, so in other words, any kind of padding, tapping vibration is good for the bones. The shaking the tree is good for the bones. So all of those things, including, the series of movements we do, such as brocade, which we're going to do today, the 7 golden passes, which is probably one of the more aggressive ones, jade body gong, all of those also are getting an input into the bone structure that's a little more physical. So typically with bone structure, any kind of padding tapping is going to be useful. And if you were interested in, say, your bone health, you might hit a little harder because you're sending a deeper vibration into the bone structure when you're hitting harder, okay? So let's go to points.
Thank you.
Yep. Yeah, so I'd say shaking the tree would be good to do every day. That is also something that people do for the lymphatic system, because the shaking the tree, again, is sending a vibration into the entire body. So it helps to reset all the cells, but again, you're vibrating the space. And it is a little bit of a kind of bouncing up and down. That's why, again, another thing that NASA said was rebounding is one of the best exercises you can do. And that's because it's kind of low impact, but what are you doing? You're bouncing up and down. And that bouncing up and down, again, is stimulating the bone structure, but also stimulating all the organs. It's moving everything around. So large intestine 4 on the one side. And remember, with our bones, and since it is Wednesday, we kind of do bone work on Wednesdays quite a bit. Remember, an important factor that's often ignored is stress management. Because if we're chronically anxious, what happens is we're always then releasing cortisol, adrenaline, so, epi, all those stress hormones. And the cells then have to repurpose a lot of the receptor sites. So let's go to liver 3 to take in more stress hormones than maybe some of the other things. And one important factor is the stress hormones, if they're running pretty consistently, have a tendency to mess with T3 and T4 in the thyroid. And those are responsible for sending the right kind of messages to build bones. And even though, so stress, because I've had a lot of clients over the decades with osteoporosis, osteopenia. And what I've noticed is they can be doing all the typical stuff and maybe eating a good diet, avoiding soda, all of that stuff. Let's go to liver 3 on the other side. However, a lot of them remain very anxious. And so when they go for their tests on a regular basis, they're really finding that it's not really slowing down very much, even though they're doing all of the stuff they were told to do. Another thing that people generally are told to do is to take calcium. But for the most part, if you're taking calcium in a pill form, it's not really that bioavailable. And the actual science is there's probably about at least, I'd say, 12 different minerals that are involved in helping the bones stay dense and healthy. So let's go to, so we did the 4 gates. So let's go to spleen 6. And so that's why I usually recommend a liquid ionic multi-mineral, because it's going to have those 12 minerals in there. And silica is an important mineral that's not talked about too much in the medical community, which also, helps to provide bone growth. So, and we can sweep around kidney 1 while we do that. So these are some important factors that aren't normally mentioned. The other thing is, so the body's very liberal about its information. So if there's any trouble with the thyroid, the body basically is saying, you're not speaking your truth. And that just means, you know, you're not really sort of standing up for yourself, which is another thing that you want to look at. So let's do spleen 6 on the other side. So not standing up for yourself, what's really helping you stand up? It's your bones. And so things like that, the emotional side is also very important with strong bones. So these are factors that I have found myself to be very important, because I have worked with clients and done more privates with them about osteoporosis and osteopenia. And they have done this more detailed work, I would say. Let's go to, we didn't do gallbladder meridian. So remember, that is the outside ankle. You're just rubbing it like this. So let's do that, because that's part of our liver routine. That's really good for the springtime. And so I have had some clients that have gone for the DEXA scan test. And remember, those machines have to be calibrated. So the accuracy can be off in those. But one thing, again, with a few clients that did follow the stress management, did go to doing those other things with the emotional body, still doing all the physical work. Let's do the gallbladder on the other side. Over a few years, over a couple of years, and I would say it might have taken 3 to 4 years, but their DEXA scan tests did show improvements. So I know what I'm saying here is accurate. So again, when we do the physical work, you want your bones to feel dense and heavy, because that's the mind sending a message in to say, oh, my bones are dense and heavy. Let's go to stomach 36. And then by taking the 12 essential minerals to build bones, but getting them in a bioavailable way is also going to be helpful. Working on stress management and emotional issues. These are what I've found to be the missing links that, if you go to the official government websites and talk to most doctors, they're not filling in these blanks that over the decades. In my investigation, I've kind of looked into it and found these other factors that, like I said, when people utilize and work with those other factors as well as doing some of the physical work, having a better diet, avoiding sodas, they do find that they slow down and maybe even reverse that bone density situation. So let's go to, remember, we're going to go to do some work with the heart meridian for summer. So on the wrist here, the creases here, if you go down a little finger and you just wiggle around right here, there's a tendon there. And so what we want to do is we want to move to the inside of that tendon up into the wrist. And if you just let your wrist relax here, that's heart 7. And so that's a good point to work with for the heart for summer. And again, any of these points you can work with during the day. Good to hold them for at least 1 minute. That would kind of be the minimum. We go through them pretty quickly just because we're going through our routine here. But typically all the stuff that we do, you would spend more time on if you had more time. Because we do kind of a full class of a lot of things, you know, it takes an hour to go through pretty much what we go through. But you could pick out certain things and just do some of those things longer. You could spend more time on the lymphatic, more time on the yin-yang padding. So it's got a heart 7 on the other side. So remember, it's just that it's really easy to find that tendon right here. And instead of going to the outside of it, you're just going to the inside of it and kind of pressing into that crease where the wrist is and just letting your wrist fall immediately there. You can kind of feel an indentation there. So when we go through these different seasons, it can have an effect on the organs. Just like that 24-hour clock, every 2 hours, chi is moving through all of the organ systems and is kind of focusing on each system for a 2-hour period. So we have a 24-hour clock that moves through those cycles of all the meridians and all the organs. And then let's go to the pericardium here. So remember, we just spiral like this from thumb to little finger, only in that direction. And then we have the longer seasonal clock that takes all year. And that goes through, again, different organ systems. So in the summer, it's the heart that we want to pay a little more attention to. In the spring, it's the liver that we want to pay a little more attention to, and that would include the gallbladder. So doing this little massage here, and this is something that people in Ayurvedic also do, is going to be really helpful to pull any excess heat out of the heart. So say you're outside, you're doing some physical stuff, it's a really hot day. You really want to start to pay attention to your heart overheating, but also kidneys could be overheating in the summer. And so doing this massage in the palm is going to draw the heat away from the heart. Let's do the other side. Remember, again, on both sides, it's thumb to little finger like this. And then let's go to our stretches. So remember, if you're weak, if you're in any kind of recovery, maybe there's autoimmune disease that is interfering with you doing a lot of standing stuff. You can also do a lot of this work seated. So we could do Weisel, looks backwards, seated. Now we're going to do brocade today, but I'm going to show you 2 different ways to do it, because often, so brocade was developed by a general about 800 years ago, and he wasn't a doctor, but he developed it for his warriors in the field because they often didn't really have enough doctors there, and they would get injured, and he wanted to develop a movement protocol that would help them regain their strength. Now, often they weren't able to get out of bed and did the movements in bed before they did them standing up. So the standing up stage that we usually do is, again, probably phase 2. So let's do rhinoceros. You can do these standing up if you want. I'm just going to do the first few sitting down. We could even do this one. Sitting down. And the full body movement of it turning. Snake body. Our big round hip rotation. Which we do in one direction and we do the other direction. So remember, our kidneys in Chinese medicine, so that's really good for the kidneys, so is this hula movement. Our kidneys are thought to be a primary area that is also involved in strong bones. So that's why doing kidney work, again, would be an important factor to add in if you're concerned about your bone density. And rotation of knees. Flexing knees. Ankle rotations. Just keep on doing those. I'm just going to go blow my nose here for a second. So with brocade, first movement is lifting heavy, and to do the best stretch, kind of just lightly interlace our fingers. We're inhaling as we move up. We do a stretch up like this and lift off our heels. Staying up here for 3 to 6 seconds, maybe longer. Coming down, doing a stretch each side. And when we do that stretch, we want to feel it coming from the bottom of the feet. And then we come back and do more reps of that. Now, if you're in recovery and you're too weak to stand up to do that and say lift off heels, then what people do is they just do a seated version. And a lot of times they'll be just sitting in bed, say with that lotus position. I really can't do that because I have some peripheral neuropathy in feet and I damaged this knee. And so for me, being able to sit in lotus doesn't really work out very well for me anymore. And so typically they may be, sitting in bed cross-legged to do this. And that would be more typical of what somebody would do rather than, sitting in bed, say like this. However, the movements would be kind of similar. So you would lift heaven by the upward stretch, and you could even kind of lift still off your heels, and you're still feeling a full body stretch here. Now, of course, if you're cross-legged, you're just immobilizing the lower part, and you're just working with this upper part. And again, you would stretch to one side, back to the center, stretch to the other side, come back to the center, and you would do your reps like that. So let's just do one more. We'll do one more. I'll stand up. You don't have to do any of these sitting down. I'm just showing people who aren't strong enough to stand up yet and do this, how they would do it sitting down. Come down on heels, stretch to one side, stretch to the other side. Now, another technique that some people use with this is when they go up, they come down on heels and kind of make a bounce. Because then again, that's sending that vibration up into the skeleton. So the next one is our bow and arrow. So for standing up, we have that wider stance. We're opening our rib cage and our spine a bit. So again, we're opening our bone structure to do this part. So we're opening the top area of our bone structure to do this part. And then when we squat down and do this, we're winding our tendons around the bones, feeling they're heavy and dense. And again, now we're doing a full body stretch with a little bit of a twist. That little bit of a twist is winding around the bones. So let's do the other side. So open the rib cage, open the spine, open the bone structure, upper body, and then open the lower body bone structure by squatting. Winding just the forearm, and that again is squeezing the bones. And we should consider that when we do that, our bones are feeling heavy and dense. So as we do that, if mindfully we're feeling our bones are heavy and dense, it's sending the message into the bone structure, yeah, my bones are actually being affected by these physical movements of my tendons and connective tissue around the bones. So now if we were to do it seated, and again, you might be cross-legged here, you can still open your rib cage and your spine doing this. You can't really do the squatting down here. But basically, again, if the body's weak, typically the weakness is going to show up in the legs. So what you do first, so again, wind the tendon and your finger comes up. So when we do that tendon winding, remember what we're doing is keeping the elbow down and just twisting the forearm. That is definitely you feel the tendons winding around the bone structure. We try to keep the shoulders nice and relaxed so that winding can get into the spine and the rib cage. So the next piece is separation of heaven and earth. So for this one, we're imagining we're pressing something heavy downward and upward with our palms. But kind of the important part here is when we get to this point, we wind the top palm forward and the bottom palm backward. And again, this is winding the tendons around the bone structure. So we come to center, and then we do it on the other side. So first the pressing up and down, and then palm goes to wind forward. This palm down here winds backward. And again, we feel that winding around the bone structure. So you could continue to do it standing up. If you were seated, you can pretty much do the same thing. It's just this with winding forward, winding backward, and then coming back to the center. So the inhale's here, the exhale is winding stretch, the inhale's here, the exhale's the winding stretch. And again, you're really going to feel it in the back, the scapula, you're going to feel it in the shoulder blades, you're going to feel it in the collarbone area. So when you do these movements, notice the bone structure that's being sort of clamped and released, clamped and released. The next piece is wise owl looks backwards. So we'll just do a couple of these. And again, when we do wise owl looks backwards, we want to notice that by moving our head like this and stretching our eyes to look behind us, we notice that our spinal cord is actually moving. And so again, we're accessing that bone structure. So the next one is probably the more difficult one to do. And again, if you have time, the idea is you're going to do 9 or 12 or 24 reps, or even as many as 36 reps of each one of these. But if you ever tried to do, say, even 12 reps of any of these, so wider stance, you'll notice that your bone structure definitely is getting stronger. So shake your head, wag your tail, wider stance. We're squatting the entire time. And again, you make it more difficult by squatting lower. Palms are just resting on thighs. And definitely hips and femur are definitely being strengthened, and even all the other bones, tibia, fibula. And we inhale here. We turn a little bit to the left, exhale, sigh, feel our spine expand. Come back to center, inhale, a little bit to the right, feel our spine expand with the exhale. Come back to center. Now this one is going to be more difficult to execute sitting down, but even sitting down, we can inhale and feel our spine expand. Exhale, feel it come back to the normal space. Inhale, feel it expand. Exhale, come back to the normal space. So what people would do is they would be seated at first, but then they kind of do what we're doing. They do a few seated, and then they'd stand up and have the strength to do a few standing. So let's just do one more quickly here of this one. So inhale here, exhale, expand the spine. The spine come back to neutral. Inhale, exhale, expand. Come back to neutral. So now officially the next one is touching toes. But again, if you have osteoporosis, osteopenia in the spine, you don't want to be doing that forward flexion movement anytime. And so a modified version of that would be wider stance, winding in, squatting down a bit, keeping elbows and wrists as close together as we can, keeping the elbows pointed in while we just do the crane beak and do this, and then come back up again. And so just continue to do that one if that one's appropriate for you, which is also appropriate for low blood pressure issues. And touching toes, again, more difficult if feet are together, a little bit easier if they're like this. So in the beginning, if you were in recovery, you would just touch toes. The harder one that we usually do is this one. And again, at first, you might not be able to go down very far, so you go to here, you turn to one side, come back to the center, turn to the other side, come back to the center, come back up again. So again, if we were to do that one seated, you could still do this stretch, and then you could do, but again, remember this is flexion, so you don't want to really do this again, and you could do side to side, okay? So that could be done. The next one is punching with angry eyes. So that one is good for the liver. So here with this particular piece, we can get rid of the anger, frustration, impatience that we might be feeling. So wider stance, light fists. You could make them a little stronger if you want to really tense this area. And the left fist is like this. The right one's like this. And what we're doing is we're turning to the left with our rib cage. This right fist comes to the front of the hip as the left goes to the back. We wind around, we squat down, we squeeze out with fierce eyes our anger, we come back to neutral again. And then we do it on the other side. So it's the movement, sinking down, squeezing out with fierce eyes. So if we were to do that sitting down, again, a little more difficult. If you're in bed in lotus, you don't have arms of chairs, so you don't have to worry about that. But if you are in a chair, you want to be sitting forward. So basically, you could do this kind of movement. So this opens up the top part of the body. And then fierce eyes squeezing out, coming back to neutral. So since we did this, now we're going to do this one, where we, again, come over here. So a little awkward in a chair. And then the last piece is lifting off heels. So again, that can be just lifting up for the 3 to 6 seconds. Could be 9 seconds. Come down. Palm should be nice and warm right now. So they could be on kidneys, lift up, hold, come down, and then this one to finish, lift up, go down. Now, say your legs were too weak, you might try to do a few of those, but seated here, there's an exercise that people do where they just do this kind of thing. And that is strengthening, because when you do this, if you sit down and do this, when you lift like this, you're definitely contracting the calf. You feel it at the bottom of the feet. So it's just a lift, hold, release, lift, hold, release kind of thing. So that covers our practice for today. We're out of time. Thank you for coming to practice together.
Thank you, and hope you guys enjoy a nice afternoon.
Yes, everybody have a great day. Yeah, I wanted to do the seated brocade because, again, it is used for recovery. And I don't know, I might have done it once or twice in class, but I don't think I've done it recently at all.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you. Take care. See everybody next.
Now. Yep.